We are live a little after 5 Central, and I am so excited to welcome you into another episode of Tiger Takes with my girl, Allie. Allie, what's popping on this Thursday in the ATL?
It's licking my wounds walking around the A after that big fat L Auburn took on Saturday. It could have been worse. We can talk about it. I definitely halfway through expected a lot worse, a score. But yeah, just 1-0 mentality moving on. Late Saturday night, we had a shock. Jimbo Fisher became the first assistant of Nick Saban to beat him. And if people had that gambling, you are making a lot of money right now. And that opened up the West. So I hope Harsin took that to heart, and I hope those players in the locker room realize an opportunity is ahead of them. What they have to do with it is what we'll find out.
I've seen TikToks of Tuscaloosa students laying legit in the road on the strip after that loss on Saturday. So they're taking it hard.
Act like you've been here before. Act like you've been a loser before, Alabama. Come on. Well, I know it's rare, but
this is trauma. But the last time Texas A&M beat Alabama was in 2012 when Georgia also stomped Auburn. And at the time, the guy I was dating was a Bama fan, and he left me in Auburn without saying a word because he was so upset that A&M beat them. And this past weekend, I was like, wonder what he's up to,
Well,
probably still crying.
Little Allie in 2012 had dyed her hair red freshman year at Auburn and was 50 pounds heavier and was on her way to a 3-9 Auburn season. So if we could not channel 2012 vibes onto the show, that would be great. But me and Lyndon were both at the Georgia game on Saturday. We have to talk about it. It just showed the gap, in my opinion, that's grown between the two programs. Honestly, very shocking. We knew that there was some position groups that were left undesirable on the last regime's era, but man, it's bad. I don't know what happened to wide receiver recruiting over the last 3 years. I don't know what in God's name has happened to the offensive line recruiting, but it's not good. And when you play Georgia and you see these guys just absolutely whip it, Auburn fans should be worried at what they let happen, and you just have to hope Harsin can right the wrong, because it's a big ship, right? This is a lot. It's not going to be a 1-year recruiting class that's going to build this up. This is going to be a 2 and 3 year getting depth on offensive line, getting a wide receiver core that can catch and be dynamic and have those explosive plays downfield that allow the rest of the offense to open up, like the run game. It just wasn't good, and it wasn't a good feeling. They didn't give up. The score was only 33-10. There's so many moments, which I think also is as bad as there were so many moments that if it just went Auburn's way, or if that ball was caught, it could have been a different ball game. And I think that's tough to swallow. I think I would have rather have lost 75-0 than have it be based off some bad ref calls, some just god-awful drops from the wide receivers. And you can say, sure, Bo didn't make perfect passes, but he made them. They were catchable balls. And at this level of the SEC, the other team was making them. And you just can't be that team that continually just lets down a drive. And they were mood killers. And then by the second half, just Auburn didn't have the depth or the talent to compete. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on where exactly you saw it go wrong and what Auburn can do moving forward.
I think definitely the air was taken out of the balloon going into halftime. I think the drop pass in the end zone for the touchdown in the second quarter, which is truly deflated. I think if we would have scored right before halftime, that last time we had the ball back, you would go in with some momentum. But I completely agree. Allie and I were both in the stadium, and in the second half, it just never got there. It never got anywhere. It wasn't like because you said the score was close. It wasn't like a hopeless. It didn't feel like a huge beatdown. It was more like.
It didn't feel 2012. It didn't feel 2012.
No, but it was more like, oh my gosh, there's nothing we can do. Like, it was just, if we can't catch the ball, if we can't block these guys, if these guys keep scoring every time they're in the red zone, which they did,
Yeah.
then like what can you do? And
Yeah. And
so
I think it's a story of also, we've had a couple comments of what happened to recruiting, what's going on. I don't think anyone knows other than there was a lot going on around the program, outside voices, inside rumblings, and I think it left not many people focused on recruiting. I think you saw a lot of hot seats. I think you saw a lot of coaching conflicts within the program, and that reflects and it shows. And Harsin is dealing with a very poor Auburn class. And I hate to say that. I mean, I love these guys. There's a lot of really good kids on this team. And I hate to say this, and I'm sure I'll get in trouble, but you just can't have your center not be an NFL prospect. I mean, he's going off to be a Delta pilot, and you hate that. But at this level, to compete, you have to have offensive linemen that are going to go 1, 2, 3 in the draft. And when was the last time Auburn had that? And it sucks.
yeah.
And you hate it for the kids, and you know that they're trying game in and game out. You know they're trying every play. But at some point, talent has to kind of win out. So we'll see. It's going to be a big game in Fayetteville. It was disappointing. Some players, were calling for TJ Finley to come in. How can you put that kid in when they're down by 15? What is he going to do? I mean, sure, maybe he can have a miraculous, quarter and a half, but that just, I feel like it was already such a deflating game that sticking him in there to try to do another, oh my God, recovery. Georgia State and Georgia are a little different of a talent team, and Auburn just couldn't keep up. So what were you going to do? So I'm glad that Harsin didn't pull that trigger. I'm glad that he didn't, put TJ Finley in a worse off spot. But what were some positions, some good spots that you saw? Like, who were some players you thought, rocked it game in, game out?
Well, we saw Tank get back in the end zone, which I think was, good there. And that was, I think, the last moment of hope maybe that we had when he scored there. And so it was good to see him do that. It was good to see Bo, and he did criticize the refs in post game. But like I said, I think, this loss did not fall on him by any means. I thought he kept the energy from LSU and was a leader on the field and did a good job there. I think it just boils down to, and Sean Shiver said it this week, a lack of focus when it comes to catching balls. And now that's okay, well then what are you going to do to regain that focus to make sure? Coach Harsin said that they've done a good job, he thinks, with putting Georgia behind. But at the same time, in my head, I'm thinking I don't know. There's so many intertwined high school classmates and stuff like we talked about last week. This is personal, and it was just the thing, and it was kind of just hopeless second half. But I was glad to see Tank get back, kind of spirited, and I was glad to see Bo, it seems like, not go backwards in that situation.
Yeah.
He's had very, very tough games against Georgia the past 2 years. So that gives me confidence. But looking to Arkansas, I mean, we know Auburn does not play well at 11 a.m. It's always kind of droopy. And now you're going to one of the furthest teams in the SEC. You're going to have to travel. So, I mean, I think it's how long can you, kind of dwell on Georgia? Because, Arkansas has 2 losses, but, I mean, that entire city, Fayetteville, is buzzing. They're feeling good about themselves this season.
Yeah.
The Hogs are a passionate fan base. So I feel like when you're looking at Auburn's schedule, and we knew Georgia kind of started the gauntlet, it's you do have to just fix mistakes, drop balls, stop. What like you said, the line. I mean, the guys are the guys that we have this year, but how can you make them improve to hold it down? They did not stand a chance against Georgia's. I mean, they're just massive mountains of men, but you can't even really let up because our schedule doesn't allow it.
Worse. And another bright spot, heading into that Georgia game where you were going to hurt them was over the middle, big passes, big plays, and Mike Bobo drew it up. Like we said, there were multiple opportunities. for
yeah.
big plays to happen. And so I think that's really encouraging. I think Mike Bobo has gotten a lot of flack ahead of time, in the first couple of games, but I thought he called a great game. I thought Harsin took, some risks going for it on fourth, and it didn't pay off. But that's a coach that I think Auburn needs if they're going to right this and get back to where they were maybe 3 or 4 years ago in recruiting. I think you need a guy like Harsin who's not afraid. And I think that's a good thing that this team has moving forward is Harsin's not one to dwell. He wants the best guys to play, and he's not afraid to play them, which I think is important, especially coming after this week. You're bound to have some guys that are down, that are annoyed, that maybe aren't doing the reps that they should. And Harsin's a coach that'll put them back, in their place. And I think that's what this team needs because, like we mentioned, the West is open. I say that laughing and jokingly just because I almost can't believe it, right? I really can't believe it that Auburn's the number one in the West right now. But you will say that Auburn's only losses are to two of the top 7 teams in the entire country, arguably. Makes me want to vomit. Arguably the best country or best team in the country in Georgia. So those aren't bad losses by any means. And both games were arguably 2 or 3 plays from swinging Auburn's way. So there's something in this team that has a chance. It just, what are they going to do with it? Can they go that extra mile in a game? And I really think it starts with this offense. People have ripped Mason, for not doing enough pass rush or not confusing linebackers, but you cannot continue to have these momentumous drives going down into red zone and dropping a ball in the end zone. You just can't do it. And it's repetitive and it's a broken record. And maybe it is what it is. Maybe this is just the team we have. I just refuse to believe that this is it, right? That this is as bad as it's going to get. So, there was some bright spots.
I think it's 28 dropped passes on the year. That's just off the top of my head. It's the worst, but I agree with you with Bobo's play calling for recruiting aspects. You're seeing something different that these wide receivers that are currently on the team did not see when they were in high school. They saw the old throw out the side, throw 5 yards on the field. Now you're seeing, the offense really go for it. So as a high school player, what do the coaches always preach? You're going to get immediate playing time. So, that's what they want. That's what it's instant gratification and this time. So if the coaches are willing to take the risk, they're going to be talking to these high school receivers right now saying, we could use you. You could be on the field as a freshman, and that just lights up these high schoolers. Yeah.
Right. And it should. And, it's there. And, I'm not scared. All these comments oh, Allie's speaking the truth. And I hate it. I love Auburn more than I am Auburn. I love Auburn so much. And I love every guy that suits up in that orange and blue. But it's tough. It's tough to see how much it's slid in the last 3 years, almost blindly, almost like we knew it was happening, but we still pulled out some games we shouldn't have. So let's not talk about it. But now it's glaring, right? Now it's just very glaring and it sucks, right? And I really hope this recruiting season, like I said, it's not going to be a one recruiting season and done. Having covered recruiting in the past, it's going to be a 2 or 3 build like Kirby Smart did. And they need to go into Georgia and start winning some of those battles. Auburn cannot afford to lose out on every kid from Georgia with that connection. They're not going to win everyone in Alabama, and they cannot keep letting Georgia win out on those top guys. In Georgia, they're going to have to steal some kids. And they got a big win in Mike Bobo's son, who's a huge offensive lineman.
Yeah,
that Georgia really, really wanted. Really wanted. He's a 3-star, which I assume will get a bump soon. But that's a big, big win. Despite his dad, understandably so, coach's sons get the brunt of it. But Georgia really, really, really wanted him. And that's a huge win for Auburn, a huge win for that class moving forward. But I think enough about the Georgia game. There was a big highlight that made us, outside of Alabama winning, we're definitely going to talk about that later in the show. But Bruce Pearl, like I mentioned last week, the ambassador Auburn needed and should get a life contract, was in the stands, shirtless, with who, Lyndon? Our king.
With our Lord and Savior, Cam Newton. I'm still repping his jersey. Can't really see. I love that guy. And, Maddie Pruitt was in there too. But Bruce and Cam, that level, it was never gosh, that moment in time, I think that's when I hit the
Almost
first.
is like surreal.
Surreal. I think that's when I whacked the first person in front of me with my pom pom because like could not be contained. There was nothing like it. The entire basketball team and Bruce, like now in my head, I'm just like, let's fast forward to basketball season, but we're
Right,
not.
yeah.
But that picture, I hope it's already in the athletics complex on the wall because
It needs to be. I mean, like, this is
there
like
it is.
unbelievable. It's not real. Like, it's photoshopped. Like, that is Auburn Jesus, Auburn's Lord and Savior,
Cam's
Auburn.
posing like Auburn G, like
It's
that is
just
how
too
Jesus
much.
poses.
It's just too much. And then you got Bruce in
And
the
look,
background, shirtless with the whole basketball team.
in those guns, I'm sorry. Like, what did he do during quarantine? Because
I need that workout because Bruce
ripped.
is
I need
looking
the workout too.
ripped. I think Bruce
I
and
love
Harsin like
Cam's
work out
hat.
together. Like the whole thing is just perfect. And you're right, it does get me so pumped for basketball season. And they're actually, take this whichever way you want. But there was a recruit who left this weekend. I was like, yeah, I wasn't expecting the football to be so loud. Auburn's like a basketball school. And if you would have had that quote from recruit 10 years ago, people would have laughed in your face.
Even
But that's
4
what
years
Bruce has
ago.
done. Even 4 years ago, like
Yeah.
that's the Bruce impact. And he's said it over and over, like he'd like to end his career at Auburn. And I sure as hell hope he does, because outside of wins and losses, this is where it becomes like, yes, he's had some tough losses. Yes. Do they need to be a national contender every single year? No, I really don't think so. Do I think they need to make a tournament? Do I think they need to make a solid run every year? Yeah. But what Bruce has done just as a whole is so much more than just like wins and losses and national titles. Like he has brought Auburn so elevated that this is going to continue on, and coaches are going to want to come after Bruce, and kids are going to want to come and build like a legacy here. And that is just too cool. It really has been awesome to see the rise. I was a Tony Barbie student. I saw it burn, and it was not pretty. And so it's been really fun. So I hope the students take advantage of being a Bruce Pearl student, especially in this era and upcoming year, that they have a shot to be really, really, really good.
And Kevin, basketball season starts next month. So we're already
We're
towards the end of
close.
October. We are very, very close. I do think Bruce works out with Bryan Harsin. That's
Love
a
it.
great point. I'm sure they are just the bros that everyone
Wouldn't you like
wants
to
be
have
around.
them as like your personal coach? I feel like they would rip us
In
into shape.
life.
Maybe we should do that in life and everything.
Oh my gosh, yes. No, basketball will be fun. But before we get to basketball, we're gonna go back to Arkansas. And speaking of Bruce, we have the Arkansas basketball coach, and ironically, his last name is Muscleman.
Muscleman, same thing.
Whatever. He doesn't have the muscles that Bruce Pearl's rocking, but what he is gonna bring to the stadium this weekend for Auburn's early morning kickoff is, I think it's 1,000 Sonic breakfast burritos for the student section. I mean, these people, they're going to be pulling out all the stops. Like, I'm telling you, this is going to be so tough and a tough environment for good old Auburn to come in and try to lead with the win. So,
Yeah.
thoughts going into Arkansas, just obviously, I feel like we can beat a dead horse with what needs to happen. But let's talk about, like, realistically, like what we think is going to happen. Like, is this Auburn's big rebound game? Could this be the game where everything does click? Like, was Georgia enough? Were all those drop passes that sit them at the bottom of the SEC enough to be like, okay, this is embarrassing, guys. We are dropping passes that hit us in the freaking face.
Yeah.
We don't want to lose back to back and go on this tear because this is like the breather that they have, so to speak. So, Allie, how do you think this game is going to go in Fayetteville?
I don't know. I think you're going to get a pissed off Arkansas team. They lost a heartbreaker to Ole Miss last weekend. I mean, an absolute brutal heartbreaker in the last minute. I think the score was like 58-57, something insane. And they had a butt whooping in Athens. So it's going to be a pissed off Arkansas team. And I think very much like Harsin, these players at Arkansas bought into Sam Pittman. I'm a huge fan. I think what he's done with Arkansas in his first year is incredible to have the buy-in, because that program was on a slippery slope too. And so it's going to be a very much, I think both coaches have a lot to prove in this game, which is very interesting. So I'm almost, it's going to come down to talent and execution, but I really do think it's going to come down to play calling by both sides of the coaching on defense and offense, because they have a lot to prove. There's a lot riding on this game. If Auburn wins, their chances of the West got one step closer. If Arkansas wins, it proves that Sam Pittman's in the right direction and can bounce back from a tough loss, and that locker room's, on its way up. And they're recruiting a whole different world out there in Arkansas. They're recruiting in Oklahoma. They're recruiting against Texas. They recruit a massive, massive different world. And a win over Auburn is huge when it comes to recruiting for Arkansas. A win over Arkansas for Auburn, I don't think is as much as recruiting as it is keeping hopes alive and proving that this team can continue to go. So I think you have to look at it from very two different points of view. My hope's not dead yet. I do think, and again, orange and blue glasses like Tiger Takes always has. I do think Auburn comes out with a win. I think Arkansas might just be a little too beat up. I think they've got some injuries. I think an 11 a.m. kickoff, no one does. Coming after a brutal heartbreak like that, they're now, 1-1 in the conference. And there's technically, I guess, still in the West too with one loss. But I just think if Auburn can execute and salt in the wounds, these players see on Twitter, right? These players are seeing me tweeting out, if you're a wide receiver, you can come play immediately. Like, they see this, and they should use that as motivation instead of letting it get sour. And I think Harsin's the type of coach to use it as motivation otherwise. So I think Auburn does come out with a win, which is insane, maybe. Crazy, probably. But I just think Arkansas is a little too beat up for this season. Now, do they think it's going to be a walk in the park? No. Do I think that this Arkansas-Auburn rivalry is different now that Gus is gone? Yes. Do I think it's a whole different ballpark with two different coaches? Yes. But I don't know. I just have a good feeling that hopefully with Alabama losing, that gave them something to fight for, because I think teams play better with that. What do you think?
I think the last part kind of nailed it. I mean, it's crazy to think about that with Bama losing to A&M, and A&M already having their losses.
Holy A&M, an unranked. Let's make sure we don't forget that little part of that scenario.
And I'm not going to even, because I'll get on the soapbox. I don't want to get on the soapbox about how Bama only fell, 4 spots to an unranked team. But then Auburn lost, the now number 1 team, and they just, completely fell out. I know it's 2 losses, but it's just, crazy to me how, little they fell in the polls, right?
Yeah. And if it was Cincinnati, they would have been tumbling right on out. And Cincy's one of the best 4 teams in the country.
Tumbleweed.
So, literally a tumbleweed right on out. So let's just, there's our soapbox for there.
Whatever.
But let's keep it going.
Move on. But that opened up, the floodgates to possibility. And if you are Auburn, you're thinking it's always oh, this has to happen. Maybe this has to happen. It's kind of is always win out. But now, because of that win over LSU on the road, I mean, that gave us what we thought was big confidence. And maybe that's why, Georgia didn't just steamroll us. I mean, maybe the players were at least playing a little bit of confidence. And I think that will carry over into the Arkansas game, because if they do lose this game, done. SEC championship hopes, done. And then what do you play for? Then it gets into the mentality. I think at this point, you have to kind of just be I'm in the driver's seat, control your own destiny, 1-0 mentality. This is a good Arkansas team, but we still have to go through the A&Ms, the Ole Miss, Mississippi States, Alabama. So execute well in this game, set yourself up. It's kind of a good start over point. And it's midway point of the season. So I think the game, I feel 11 a.m. games are already sloppy, and every game this year for Auburn has been sloppy. So I do think it'll be kind of a sludge fest, but I do believe that Auburn will get the win, and I think it'll be close. And I think this will be one of those Auburn games where people kind of have a heart attack, and they are kind of I'm glad that's over. You know what I mean? I don't think it'll be that enjoyable, but you have to kind of, if you're a player, like the way Georgia won, and like we talked about with Auburn beating themselves. That's such a phrase like my high school softball coach always said. Like there's a difference
Yeah.
between just getting beat and beating yourself. And Auburn is doing a really good job. I'm not saying like, Georgia would have beat Auburn or, lost if Auburn played perfect, but right now with the amount of drop passes and the sloppiness, it's just you're beating yourself.
And
So
on defense too, you can't have Zacoby McClain take a hit like that.
yeah.
It's going to get called every single time. We know that. And you
Yeah.
just can't afford to lose arguably your best leader on defense out in the first, quarter of the game. You just
Yeah.
cannot afford to beat yourself. And I think
Well,
that's what
discipline.
Harsin has
Yeah.
been preaching. And he's a big discipline guy. I mean, that's what we've heard since he got here, is that this team is going to be disciplined and or be punished if not. And I thought it was wild that Sean Shriver said, this doesn't happen in practice, this kind of undisciplined. So I am curious, is it the jitters? Is it getting in your own head of, I've dropped the last one, I'm going to drop this one, or, I missed this tackle, I'm going to miss, this. Like, I'm very curious what's not translating from practice. Now, Harson's and I are saying, oh, we've had great practices, guys are looking good. Like, he's not that kind of coach at all. But it was interesting to hear a player say that, because I think, why lie? So there's a disconnect, right? That's just not translating. And you've got to think that it's going to give. You've got to think that something's going to crack, or you're going to have a really, really tough next month and a half stretch that I don't think Auburn fans are ready in. A lot of people are saying Harsin must win this game and Harsin has to win this game. Like, you'd love for him to win. I think it would be a good hallmark win for him, but I don't think this changes my belief in him at all. I think people have seen what kind of team he's working with, and he's salvaged quite a few things from it. I mean, beating LSU on the road is not easy at 9 p.m. And I think I don't think this is like a must win, or like it's time to like light the fire under him. Like, I don't see that at all. And this is a good point from Caleb that Arkansas didn't. There was a lot of hype of Arkansas going into Athens. I mean, we were riding down like, oh my God, Auburn, Georgia is going to be the 11 a.m. kickoff because Arkansas is going to go down to Athens and whoop. And they didn't even put a point up. And Auburn had multiple opportunities to put up more than 10 points on Georgia. So I think that's a really good sign. And like I said,
Auburn was the team that finally did make, Georgia's defense crack a little bit. No one else has done it. So
yeah, exactly. And so I think Arkansas, like I've said, is just a little too beat up. Now, that's not to say it's going to be a walk in the park. We both said that's not what we see happening. But I do think Auburn has a little bit more to fight for. And I'm curious to see how other teams rebound this week. I'm curious to see what this Ole Miss team, I mean, they had another big hyped game against Alabama and left deflated, but then came out and beat Arkansas in a huge game in the West. Like, what is that Ole Miss team like? You've got Kentucky coming into Athens this week, and it's a damn good Kentucky team that has a massive chip on their shoulder.
Excited.
I'm pumped. Do I think that they're going to walk out of Athens and win? No. But do I think Auburn gave Stoops something to look at on offense to make it work? Yeah. Do I think maybe Kentucky has a better offense than Auburn? Maybe. So I think there's a lot of games that a lot of eyes are going to be on. And ironically, I think a lot of eyes are going to be on this Arkansas Auburn team just because there's so much out there. Like you said, right? Like, there's so many opportunities of different ways that this could go. And I think that's a little scary. And exciting too. But who would you say?
I mean, I
love it too.
I like drama.
I do too. People hate it. Like, oh, why would you not want to be an Alabama fan who just like walks in and wins it all? Well, I enjoy chaos. Like, my life is just one giant chaos ball. Dating life is chaos. Life is just chaos. Like, why would I not want to add Auburn football to the mix?
Let it go.
Just let it go. But who would you say would be like your three players that you want to see have the best game of the season this Saturday? Like, who are your top three players that you're like, they've got to play all out? Or
do we know? Do we think we're going to get Owen? I haven't even read up on this. I read up tonight. Are we going to get Owen Papo back?
I think it's still like a game time. I think they're
game time.
Yeah,
I do also think like, I mean, he's such a big leader. Like, I think we will see a difference on defense when he is back.
I agree.
So hopefully, I mean, let's see. I hope Auburn's secondary does fantastic. I hope Smoke Monday goes off. You know, he's had some interceptions,
Or
but also
Smoke Monday,
sometimes
not Zacoby McClain. Sorry, interrupt. But like Smoke
Smoke
Monday was
Monday.
the one that got the targeting last week.
Yeah, and so I just think like if he goes off, that would be great, fantastic. I hope Bo Nix does good. We're still wishing Bo the best, and obviously
I think Jarquez
this will be
Hunter.
big.
I need him. I said this Saturday, I'd start him over Tank right now. That's a bold take.
Oh, for sure.
I just don't. Whatever is up with Tank is a hindrance. Blame it on the line. Blame it on whatever. I think Jarquez Hunter plays line or no line. He just happens to always find space. And I think against a team like Arkansas, who's not quite as strong as Georgia and is a little beaten up, like he could do some serious damage. And so I'm really rooting for the Cowboy hat rocking, boot wearing freshman boy out there in Fayetteville,
Mississippi,
to do some work.
Dude. Yeah, no, him for sure. I think, he had that explosive game early in their season against Alabama State. So, yeah, I mean, I think that would be amazing. And he's just so fun, too. His entire character and personality, great guy to have on the team.
Yeah, and something to note on the wide receivers, there are some freshmen that just like haven't seen the field, and people are, Harsin has said, you're not playing in my games on Saturdays if you're not putting in the work. And there's some talented freshmen that came into this class that have not seen the field on a wide receiver, and you lead to believe what kind of doghouse that they're in. And so these guys like Demetrius Robertson, that's been very disappointing so far this season. Shedrick Jackson's had some drop. Like these guys still are having opportunity to make something happen, and you just have to believe one of them's going to step up, right? You had Luke, the tight end for Auburn, play arguably has been the most solid guy for Bo Nix the whole season. He's even had some tough drops. So at least he's reliable on the catch after, right? Like at least he's, there. And I think Hudson really needs to have a big game too. He's been also probably the most dynamic wide receiver Auburn's maybe had this season, but that's saying little. But I think he needs to have a very big game to just shut the noise up, right? Like we're sitting here beating a dead horse. Like they hear it. Like, don't they want to shut it up? And the only way you're going to do that is by changing, And
Elijah Canyon had, a couple big catches over the last several games. So maybe it'd be nice to get him, more consistent in there and more targets just to see. Because I agree. I mean, I think you preached it all preseason how Demetrius Robertson has one chance and literally hasn't done anything with it so far. And you would think that, he had so many drop passes against Georgia, and maybe that was the jitters. Maybe that was awkward for him going up against them. I don't know, but it's one that in that moment where, big time athletes make, big time plays and big time games, and he was absent. So,
and I think Auburn on both sides is still missing. Put Bo aside of LSU game. I think he's made it known, but I think Auburn's still looking for a player on both sides that's going to come out and just be an absolute game changer. Going like when you step on the field, you're getting 110%, and I think Auburn's missing that on both sides. I think you have a lot of guys that have sparks here and there, and I think at this midpoint season, in game 6, it's time for somebody on either side to step up and say, you know what, this is it, and this is my game. And a lot can happen. I mean, we haven't even touched Alabama, but hot damn, Jimbo. And it was a tough. Alabama didn't look good. It wasn't like they beat themselves up, but they got exposed for some stuff that they have looked better at in futures past. And Alabama's lost and won the national championship. I fully expect it to be Alabama, Georgia, and the SEC. Fully expect both teams to be in the playoffs. I'm not naive to the fact that that's how this world works, but I think it's any given Saturday. And I think hopefully Auburn takes that to heart and realizes it's any given Saturday. Put Georgia behind, and it's time to rock and head on to Fayetteville.
Head on to Fayetteville. All right, so let's wrap this up with our lovely Tiger Toast. What are you going to be toasting to this week?
Well, I finally got my new home field shirt, dope shirt. If you guys haven't gone and checked them out. I think you get like 10% off your first order. So go check out Home Field. Toasting them because I finally got my shirt from my old apartment. They held it hostage for quite a few days. Who am I going to toast it for? Let's see. I'm going to toast to Auburn chaos, hopefully like having enough in it to like make something happen, right? Like it just seems like they're on the edge. Again, in that Georgia game, it just felt like, oh my God, one play, we could have done something, one play. And hopefully like this game is like that one interception drops for Auburn, or that one explosive play in the end zone drops for Auburn, and it can spark something in this team, because I think there's enough in them to at least make things fun. So cheers to some Auburn chaos and hopefully having enough juice in it to, make the rest of the season fun rather than long.
That is a great toast. I'm going to toast to War Eagle Productions and the work they do with the pregame videos, because once again, that was my favorite memory of the Georgia game. It kind of all literally after kickoff, like after the Bruce Pearl madness with Cam, after the pregame videos, like I never got that high that I had again. And they just do a really good job. And I think it makes one of, Jordan Hare one of the best stadium environments in the country.
It was loud.
And
it was loud
and
for a team that had, people said no shot. Jordan Hare was loud. It's not the loudest I've ever heard. It wasn't 2017, but
no, it was
damn
not
loud.
2017.
It was damn loud for a 2:30 kickoff. It was hotter than Hades, though. And if you saw me and Lyndon out at Sky Bar later that night, no, you didn't, because
I didn't.
We were just bringing it back old school. We were just hitting the dance floor.
But yeah, we hit the dance floor during the wrong time. Hit the dance floor.
Yeah, we were a little.
So we were a little. But you know what?
We had fun. That's what going back to Auburn is. So
living your glory days. All right. Well, I'm in the ATL this weekend, so I'll text you, hit you up.
We're here. Come on and watch.
Are you there, or are you at another wedding?
No, we are watching the game, and we'll be having mimosas ready to rock for a 12 p.m. kickoff. So hopefully y'all are joining us. Thanks for joining. I know these ones are tough coming off a loss, especially bitter, to Georgia, but I really do still believe there's some hope left. So hopefully you guys stick along on these journeys with us on Tiger Takes, and fingers crossed we'll be 4-2 next week.
Woohoo! Bye.